You're listening to WCAT Radio, your home for authentic Catholic programming.
Welcome to the Catholic Mama, where you'll learn how to deepen and defend your faith, find comfort as we share the vocation of parenthood, and learn how to raise your children confidently Catholic. I'm your host, Christine Mooney Flynn. Let's get started. Hello, and welcome to the Catholic Mama podcast. I'm your host, Christine Mooney Flynn, and thanks for joining me on this episode, where I'm also joined by a Catholic wife, mom, a Catholic convert, mom, mother. I said mother. Oh boy, I'm going to just let you talk, Jennifer. So everybody listening, this is Jennifer Sharpe. She's joining me. She is an author of, I am sure if you have young children, you have probably seen some of her books over the past couple of years. Including her Mass books, which are great. And then we were just talking before I hit record how much we like joyful noises in our household. So Jennifer, thank you so much for joining me in my jumbled introduction of yourself.
Oh, thank you for having me, Christine. I'm happy to talk with you today.
Yeah. So, I just realized as, we were prepping for our time together, that you are a really recent convert to the faith, just like me. So that's awesome to see that.
Yeah, I saw you converted in 2018. I converted in 2017.
Yeah, so just ahead of me. And look, I love that because, whenever I talk about my own conversion or how long it's been, like, wow, you've, getting the podcast started and everything, like, oh, wow, you kind of jumped on that pretty fast. I said, well, once I made the move, I knew I wanted to move quickly. And it sounds like, you started writing books fast. So the Lord was getting you going.
I really did. I think we started looking at the church. So I grew up like in a devout Protestant home is what my background is. And by the time I became an adult and met my husband, I had really sort of become this Protestant who felt that Christianity was really this intellectual pursuit or this set of beliefs that we have. And then in addition to that, it was also like a set of behaviors. You go to church, you pray with your kids, you do the things. And that's kind of where I had been, like, since I kind of came into my faith as a little kid, all the way up until a couple of years ago when we kind of started looking into going to Mass and becoming Catholic. So at that point, I read a book. I had, how like you can get like the Amazon like free trial for the Kindle or whatever.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
So my husband was out with the kids for a weekend, like camping, and I just had the little ones, and I thought I'm going to get like a Kindle book. And so I ended up reading this random like free book on the Kindle that was like about Catholicism. And then I shared it with my husband when I got home, and I was just like, I need to read more about this. So just over a few months of reading it, I kind of intellectually, I was like, okay, I'm pretty sure I'm not Protestant anymore, but like I've never gone to Mass or anything like that. So it was all kind of in my head at that point.
Did you have a bias against Catholicism growing up or no?
I don't think I had a strong bias. I just never thought about it. Some of my family are, they left the Catholic faith like in their teens and stuff. And I had gotten sort of this subconscious message that was just some Catholics are Christians, but most of them probably aren't because their beliefs differ in certain ways from what I believed as a evangelical Protestant. And those differences were enough that a lot of them probably were just like going through the motions.
Sure.
But I don't think it was something that my family really ever talked about. And honestly, I had never even been into like a Mass or a liturgical kind of church at all. I had always been at non-denominational kind of evangelical churches. So it was so far off my radar that,
how was that first Mass coming into it then?
So that was a funny story, Christine. So we kept all of this a secret from our kids, my two oldest. So I have 5 kids ranging from 14 down to 5. So at the time they were like 11 down to like 1 or something like that. And we kind of kept it a secret from them just because the church that we were at the time was like our whole social like gathering was that church. We met up with them on the weekends. We ate meals with the people who went there. And so they were quite involved there. And we were just afraid that if we brought them to Mass, if we started doing something different, that it could be really hard on our kids.
Mm.
So that first Mass, like, it was Valentine's Day. It was like the first Sunday in Lent, or the first Saturday, because it was a vigil in Lent. And my in-laws were in town, and they said, do you guys want to go on a date? You know, for Valentine's Day, we'll watch the kids. Of course, I still had the baby, but I was like, yes, I do want to go on a date. And so, because that's like,
never say no.
Yes, that's a rare opportunity. So my husband and I got in the car, and I was like, so what if we like went to Mass, you know, like for our date? He's like, if that's what you want to do, then that's what we'll do then. So, I mean, I was a little scared walking in, because I knew that based on some of my family members probably would be upset that we were kind of heading in that direction.
Yeah.
And I think deep down I was a little bit scared that I would offend God by going, which looking back is like hilarious. But I mean, I just thought, am I doing the right thing? This is so different than what I'd ever done, especially thinking about the Eucharist. And I knew by then that, you know, Catholics believe the Eucharist really is Jesus, you know, present in the host. And am I worshiping bread if I go there? If I kneel, am I tacitly implying that, like, I agree? You know, so there's all these thoughts. I'm such an overthinker that, yeah, so much was going through my head. But I went. We sat in the back, like as far back at our church, and it's still the parish that we go to now. It's the largest parish in our diocese. So we sat way in the back, and like as far as you could get next to the holy water fonts. And, you know, of course, we sat for the communion. We didn't go up. And as I watched all of these people kind of process up the aisle, I just got this feeling, and it still to this day like brings me to tears, because I realized there is something here that is well beyond an intellectual pursuit, a set of beliefs, or a set of behaviors. Like what they are receiving, if it really is God, you know, that they're receiving in communion, like I'm missing out, like big time. And so, and it was kind of a crazy thing, because like I told you, it's a huge church. There's probably, I don't know, 1,500 people in attendance or something. At the end, the priest processes out, and you know they don't know everybody at a church that size. And then the priest just reached out before he left, and he blessed, I had my baby, he blessed her on the forehead. And I just thought, out of this whole church, like, we didn't go out for communion. How could he possibly have even seen us or known we were new or anything? Like, it was completely the Holy Spirit. And I just got chills. I was like, yeah, I'm definitely becoming Catholic.
Like, that was the start of Lent. Is this like 2017? So Easter, you were baptized or far into the Catholic faith?
So no, that was 2016. So
okay, I was going to say, that's really quick. Yeah. Usually there's RCIA, okay.
Yeah, so that was 2016, and by then it was practically, like you're right, it was practically the end of RCIA. So when we talked to the priest, he kind of just said, you know, start getting involved in the parish. He invited us to like some Bible studies and things, get involved with the young parents, and then when the summer comes, like in August, you could start in RCIA, like at that point. So we got involved in a Bible study with the young parents that was called Catholic Christian Outreach. I don't know if you've heard of it.
No, I haven't.
I have not heard of it at a lot of parishes, but I absolutely love this Bible study, and I've done it. I think I've done it twice now, once as a participant, and then my husband and I did it leading it with a small group. But it's like 6 books that you work through. In the first book, they talk about just basic Christianity. And one of the things that the kind of like the leader who was leading it said is he just kind of said, okay, guys, I know you all have been Christians or Catholics for a long time. And of course, at this point, I'm still not Catholic. I'm just waiting to go to RCIA. But I like, so I didn't mention this before, but my husband and I both went to a Christian college and both minored in Bible. He was a missionary kid. So as far as Christianity knowledge, we had a lot more maybe than some of the other Catholics who were taking the study with us. But again, it was still kind of up in my head. And he says, I know this is so basic and you all already know this, but like Jesus loves you individually. And like he misses you when you don't come to Mass. He misses you when you don't pray. And I just was like, and everyone was like, yes, we know that. And I just was like, how can you have, like I majored in intercultural studies with this intention of like becoming an overseas missionary. I minored in Bible. I had like large portions of scripture memorized, but for some reason it had never kind of sunk down that Christianity was so much more than this set of beliefs and behaviors. And I just like raised my hand and I was like, you guys are just like gonna think I'm crazy, but I don't think I realized that Jesus cared about me as an individual and that he actually could possibly miss me. And this experience that I had at that first Mass where it was like, these people have something I don't. And yes, I know a lot of Catholics probably don't realize what they have, but those two experiences to me together, I think formed my spirituality going forward. It was like, you know, this isn't just something that we can live our lives by. It's not a set of values. It's a personal relationship that we can experience with the creator of the world. And I think ever since then, honestly, I haven't been able to be quiet about it since then. And that's really why I started writing books.
That's really interesting. Yeah, because I mean, we're called to the universal church, and there's that's a vast community, and we're called into that communal experience. But you're right. I mean, every time we have the Eucharist, or at least spiritual communion, if we're not able to take the physical communion for any reason, we have that personal one-on-one relationship with the God who came here and suffered and died for us, because he loves each and every one of us so individually and so beautifully. It's interesting that was, not it hadn't sunk in, like you said, over the years, even though that you had studied the Christian faith so thoroughly.
Yeah, it's kind of crazy. I mean, looking back, I'm just like, how is it possible? But yeah, I guess sometimes you just have to be in the correct environment, in the right environment, and then, your eyes are open to things, or maybe I just spiritually wasn't open to them because I was so stuck on, like, I knew everything there was to know in my mind about Christianity. And so it was like, I wasn't teachable, if that makes sense.
It's interesting. What, how quickly did you publish the first book, or what got you into the idea of writing books once you became Catholic?
So I published pretty quickly. I don't remember the dates, but I know the first one was in 2017. And like I said, I came in 2017. But really what got me kind of thinking about it was I was sitting in Mass at one point, and there was a little guy in front of me. He was probably like 8 years old or something, and he was reading a Lego magazine. So he was standing when we were supposed to stand. He was sitting when we were supposed to sit, and kneeling when we were supposed to kneel. And so the behavior was there, right? But I thought there has to be something more for our kids than just getting them to behave in Mass. And I know for my kids, because especially for the older two, it was like we came in, my oldest had just turned 12 when we came in, and I didn't want to repeat that same cycle with my kids that I had of just, it's a set of behaviors, it's things that we learn, we take them to religious ed and they learn the things. There has to be some sort of engagement or attraction or involvement in the church and in the Mass. And so that's when I got this idea. I thought, I'm going to Google that and just see if there is like some kind of Mass journal out there, because that would be great for kids like this who, they don't get what's going on in the Mass. And so their parents would just give them a magazine so that they're not disruptive and bored. Mm-hmm. Well, there wasn't anything like that. So I thought, well, I'll just write one. And, like that can't be very hard to write a journal, right? And I thought no one's probably going to use it anyway, because I'd never seen anyone in Mass with like anything like that for their kids. I'd seen like little missals and stuff, but not a journal where they're writing things down during the Mass. But it was actually quite popular, and some of the young moms at my parish asked me if I would do one for younger kids that maybe didn't have writing but had some interactive elements and stuff. So I thought, oh sure, why not? I'll do it for the ladies at my parish. And that one just that's my most popular one. It just kind of blew out of the water. And then from there, it was just sort of like these periods of time where it almost felt like the Holy Spirit was just saying, try this new idea, try this. And it would just take me a few days to kind of get the whole concept of the book together. And of course, over time, the book would be written and then edited and stuff. But Yeah, I don't know. I
And
guess I'm just trying to follow what the Holy Spirit asks.
yeah, well, that's very good. I mean, it's easier said than done. So that's pretty awesome that you were, I mean, yeah, I'll just write a book. And then suddenly, have you seen people in your own parish using your books?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah.
That's kind of fun, isn't it?
Yeah, it is fun. And yeah, my kids use them too. Not all of them, but the ones that are the right ages will use them. And then people who are sitting behind us will be like, "Where did you get that book?" And I'm like, "Okay, this is awkward. I wrote it." It's like,
Yeah, you can't just say
so
it's
awkward,
mine.
but
No, where'd you get it?
yeah.
Oh, no, it's mine. I did it.
Yeah, that's literally my name right there. But yeah, yeah, I have definitely seen people using it or coming up to me and saying, "Oh, you're the one who wrote that book," or whatever. Yeah.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned, you don't want kids just to behave in mass. So probably about almost 2 years now. I kind of forget how long I've been doing this podcast. So, because it was like right after I came into the church. My husband has a podcast. He's like, "You should do it." And I was like, okay. Yeah, if you set up the microphone and plug it in, I'll talk. So I started doing it. So it was a couple years ago, I think, that I did an episode. I know you and I talked about this, about, how to have well-behaved kids at mass.
Yeah,
And that's great, especially for like the little ones, how to keep them not screaming, or something. But you're right. You can't just make them do the things and hope that's going to be enough. You don't want them just to be quiet. You want them to engage. So I'm really excited that as we were talking about what to talk about on this episode, it was, coming from the perspective of your experience and getting kids engaged and your background, what we can do besides using your books, which I want to talk more about. What can we do to keep kids engaged in the mass rather than just going through the motions like that little boy was that you saw?
Yeah. I get this question all the time. And when I do get asked to speak, it's usually on this question. And so I have thought a lot about it. And I think my experiences when I first converted are what really inform me in terms of how I raise my kids to be engaged in the Mass. When you think about engagement, that is to involve somebody's attention. It should be like you're occupying or you're attracted to and want to be involved in the Mass. Whereas behavior is just conducting yourself like in a way that's accepted. Everybody knows that you're supposed to sit then and be quiet during the homily and do the things. So if what Christianity is a lot more than just a set of behaviors, right, then what we do to help our children engage in the Mass has to go well beyond how to get them to behave in the Mass. It has to be about attracting their attention and involving them in the liturgy. But I think the way to do that really is only to help your children have a personal relationship with Jesus, which they experience through the church and through the sacraments. But it is a personal relationship. It isn't just a set of beliefs like the catechism. Those are really important. And it isn't, but it's not just that. And it isn't just, yes, they can do the behaviors. And that's important too, because you don't want a kid who's just running around and being crazy. But it has to be this relationship that they have with Jesus. And you develop that not just by saying, okay, well, I'm going to help them engage in the Mass. It has to be something that they do over all of their life during the moments when they're waking up and when they're eating and when they're coming home from school, their evening prayer time, what they see you doing, how you guys spend your free time. All of that goes into a relationship with Jesus. And they have to understand that it really is Jesus loves them as an individual. And the reason why I say all of that, because that seems kind of like, well, we're talking about the Mass. Why are we talking about, every aspect of life? If I just want to know how to get my kid to engage in Mass. Well, the reality is, like, it's not that much different than a human relationship, right? Like, the only way you can develop that relationship is by spending time and kind of surrounding yourself with that person and, engaging with that person. And the way we can do that primarily here on earth, now that Jesus is, he's not walking the earth anymore, is through the Mass, is through the Eucharist, because that's how he's chosen to kind of be with us in a sustained way. So it's relevant in the sense that it's the place where we can spend the most time with Jesus in the most intimate ways in the Mass. And so to engage in the Mass we have to quite understand that it's not just this set of beliefs or this thing we do on Sundays. It's our whole life is kind of focusing and revolving around the Eucharist. Does that, I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah, that makes sense. I think, we've always made a point of, even if we're tired or whatever, we never complain about going to church or like, what are we going to do this weekend? Well, there's church, so mass on Sunday. Like we make it, when we talk about our weekend, we always make it, that's the focal point, and the other things kind of revolve around. And the same because we do daily mass several times a week. It's like the first thing that we talk about when it comes to like things that we're going to do in that small way. I think it orients the kids to think, oh, this is the most important thing, or at least that's what I'm hoping. I don't know.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it does. And you see so many families who are, they're prioritizing sports or other extracurricular things. And there's nothing wrong with sports or extracurricular activities. It's just that when you prioritize it and mass is just, we have to make sure we go to mass, but then everything else, is what we're actually looking forward to that day. It just, I think it sends the wrong kind of message. It's a lifestyle that just constantly points to Jesus. So maybe, when you're done with soccer practice, you stop in at adoration for 10 minutes or something like that, like where you are constantly just bringing it back home. I like to think of our church, as the tabernacle as kind of like our home base. And so if we're driving by a parish or something, like if we go to visit family a couple hours away, we'll stop by a church there and, attend the mass, or we'll look at the little shrines that they have, or look at the stained glass windows, or visit their adoration chapel or whatever, just like little things that, you're bringing it back to that home base all the time, no matter where you are or what you're doing. If you have to travel for sports or something like that, then make it into like a little pilgrimage and find some neat little sites you could go to there.
I like that idea of even in traveling and doing that. I know my husband spent several years living in Michigan, and every time we go back, we go to this one little church that is, I think it might be the oldest Catholic church in Michigan. I could be wrong about this, but it's very quaint. The pews are as uncomfortable as you might imagine from a church that's a couple hundred years old, and everything squeaks, the floorboards squeak. But it's always very special, and it's always a highlight of our trip. And we always stop. I mean, we were there, and there happened to be a pancake breakfast the last time, and we made sure that we just stayed for that and had a nice time, and try to make it, you're right, as part of a focal point of whatever we're doing, because it is the source and summit of the Catholic life is that Eucharist. So it should revolve, our whole life should revolve around it in some way.
Yeah.
But I know I grew up without pretty much any religion except for, the religion of self, which is not a good place to be in by any means. So I don't have a lot of the experiences of just like going through the motions, or do we remember my mom and my dad saying, well, isn't it great we can stay home in our pajamas on Sundays. We don't have to be like those other people have to go to church, or we can do whatever we want on Sundays.
Yeah.
But as my husband got older, he was one of those where his family, basketball got in the way, guitar practice. Well, don't worry about church. It just slowly faded into the background. And it's true. If you don't make a concerted effort, it's not just about the mass on that one day, on your fulfilling that one obligation. It really is creating a whole lifestyle.
Absolutely. And there's a lot you can do other than going to mass. Make sure that you're praying with your family. One of the things we do is we have like a home altar or like a prayer shelf in our living room with kind of all the kids' like Catholic books on it. And there's candles and our family Bible and stuff. And so we'll gather there, every night to do family prayer. And that can look completely different. Like you were saying that you like to use Joyful Noises, my prayer book. Mm-hmm. Sometimes we'll use that. My kids are getting a little bit old for it now. My youngest is 5 now. So she has them all memorized. She'd probably still love to do that every day, but the older kids, they like to choose songs right now, but not from my book because they have them all memorized. But so we do family prayer there, and then we'll say, like, we'll ask for the saints' intercessions as we do the candles and stuff like that. And then each kid has their own little mini prayer shelf in their room. It doesn't have to be elaborate. It's just, like some pegged all saints or whatever little holy cards they picked up at different places, and just, little plastic rosaries they've made and things like that. But it's sort of like an anchor in each part of the house that reminds them, oh yeah, this is what my life is about. There's so many toys and things and all the distractions and TV shows and all the things, and there's nothing necessarily wrong with that. It's just bringing them back to their faith in different ways. So like with the prayer shelves, or you could use religious art. A lot of the religious art that we adults like, maybe kids aren't attracted to. So try to pick pieces that your kids actually would like. And that may mean like printables of the little tiny saints and things like that. It doesn't have to be, beautiful in your eyes to speak to your child. So the important part is that it does speak to them. Otherwise, what is it really doing there other than just like collecting dust on the wall?
Yeah. Yeah. If our church is Catholic and universal, it means it's for everyone, and one thing might not work for another, especially as we're trying to introduce the faith to, a 4-year-old or a 12-year-old or, an adult will all be different. Yeah, that's an interesting point to make. So you take your kid, everybody goes through adoration. You guys are praying every night. So you're steeping your whole lives in Catholicism.
Absolutely.
It's not just like this one-off thing that you do on the weekends. How did your kids fare when they came into the church? Was it hard to leave where they had been?
The younger ones were just fine. I don't think because they were like 3 or 4-ish and under. The older two, they were like 10 and 12 when we finally came in. And I remember the first time, so I told you we didn't bring them to mass the first time. We just went, the two of us with my littlest. And so then after we went to the mass, and we were like, there was nothing horrible about that. Like, we need to keep going and like bring our kids and learn more about this stuff. So we told them we're going to start going to mass on Saturday nights, and we'll keep going to our regular church on Sundays. That's where, like I said, all their friend group was. And my daughter, it's crazy. We never talked about Catholicism, but she started crying. And I said, why are you crying? And she said, I just didn't know that Catholics were actually Christians. And I was just shocked and like broken, because I don't know. It's weird how like some things just subconsciously like pass down to your kids, that someone passed that down to me and I passed that down to my kids. Just ignorance and not knowing anything about Catholicism. Someone once told me that most Catholics probably aren't Christians. I thought, oh, that must be true. And at some point I must have communicated that to her. And she was just like a little bit afraid, the same way I was, which is crazy because she was only 10. But I did talk to the deacon at our parish before we started our CIA, and he said, just have your kids go through the classes, they'll make friends and they'll be fine. And he was completely right. They did. And like I said, just involving them and engaging them. We go to all the things, the public rosaries and stuff, and take them to adoration for short periods of time. And, have them go to the youth groups and all the things. And they've done great. They really have. I think both of them are kind of inspirations to me in some ways now, in the way that they express their faith.
That's very cool. Yeah, I've always noticed with our kids, so at least my oldest child, he's only 6, but we converted pretty recently. So he remembered a time when we didn't go to church, at least when we first converted. I think he's having a hard time remembering now that there was several years of his life where we didn't go. But he always asks the best questions. I'm like, man, this is great. This makes me need to bone up more on the faith so I can answer that question, because that knowledge is very important going forward. But yeah, we take them to everything, pretty much everything. Adoration. We've got a fish fry, and actually I'm really happy that my parish next Friday is doing a fish fry and then family adoration right after it. So that should be, God bless those parishes that do those things to bring Jesus to even the church's youngest members.
Absolutely.
So once you're in the mass, you're setting everything up leading up into the mass so that they will be more engaged in it. When you're in the mass with the children, do you have any tips for people on how to keep them paying attention and involved?
Yeah. And I think, why we're going over all of this, like this needs to be a lifestyle kind of thing, is that I think that sort of lifestyle just bleeds into the Mass, if that makes sense. Like, I feel like I never really had to, I don't know, I don't want to say I never had to discipline my kids, because some of them are more difficult than others. That's true. But when you make your life all about Jesus, going to the Mass becomes as natural as putting on your pajamas when you go to bed, as, putting your dishes in the sink after dinner, or whatever it is, like buckling your seatbelt when you get in the car. It becomes so natural and part of your routine that a lot of behavioral issues, I think, kind of fall away. And so that's why I like to approach it from, this has to be a lifestyle, and not so much, these are the things that you can do to keep your kid like behaving in the Mass, because the behavioral issues, I think, tend to melt away. But as far as like my tips for being in Mass, some of the things that parents have kind of given me feedback when I've given these talks is that they say that they're so busy trying to get their kid to kind of behave in the Mass, especially younger kids, when they're really wiggly, and God kind of made kids wiggly. So that's why I like to tell people that, God made them wiggly. So don't try to make them silent little, I don't know, robot beings or something. But when the Mass is over, whatever happened there, please let it go. Forgive your child and forgive yourself for however you felt on the inside. Because I know a lot of the parents I talk to, they're like, I just leave Mass so angry that I don't want to keep taking my kid, because I don't want to be angry at them every time I'm trying to show them Jesus. And these are, people who maybe they really do have a relationship with Jesus, and they want their kids to have that. But when they go, because the child is difficult, there's sort of like an internal emotional response that kind of gets triggered when they go. And then, so they're wanting to go less and less. So what I would say to that is, you have to take a second to go, okay, that wasn't the end of the world. I'm going to try better next time. And I'm going to let it go and not let that kind of bleed into the rest of our day after Mass. And also, I think, another sentiment that's kind of come up when I talk to parents is that they say, well, we'll take our kids out of Mass and we will, have them put their head in a corner and have a timeout, or, take them in the bathroom and like give them a talking to and all the things. I would really avoid threatening and punishing your kids like about the Mass, because if the Mass is the place where we meet Jesus in the most special and intimate way, then you don't want to put a bunch of like negative feelings around that, because then as they get older, they're not going to want to be there, because they have all those kind of memories of it being so hard for them to sit still, and mom and dad were so mad and they walked me out and their face is so disappointed. You have to kind of think of it as, this is an immediate trial that we're having, but the war, if you will, overall is that we want our child we want to shape their heart so that they really do understand Jesus's love for them. And that Jesus doesn't really care so much about our behaviors. One of the things I kind of discovered, coming into the church, is that behaviors are important in a way. Yes, there's rules we need to follow, and Jesus gives us, the two greatest commandments and all of that. But more so, the commandment is to love and to love Jesus, right? To love the Lord your God with all your heart and love your neighbor as yourself. So we want to shape their hearts. So avoid just threatening them and punishing them, but instead keep redirecting them. Point out the different things at the Mass. Point out the tabernacle. Look, there's Jesus. Can you find, the red candle that shows us Jesus is there? You give them a little money to put in the poor box. All the little things that kind of help them to engage in the Mass, I think, is more the way to go with younger kids, is focusing on the positive things and avoiding kind of making them feel bad for the way that God kind of made them as wiggly little funny little kids.
Yeah. That's a very good point, because how many times you've seen, and have been that frustrated parent, but how many times you see frustrated parents and they're grumbling and they're, just trying to get their kids out of the Mass as quickly as possible at the end. And you can tell they're visibly upset. But I love that, just to let it go and not punish the child for how they had behaved in the Mass. We always try to make the Mass is wonderful, and then we're going to do something fun right after it as a family, because we're celebrating that we went to Mass. We always try to yay, it's happy. But there's different ways. Like my son is 6 and learning to read, and so he likes to follow his fingers. He wants me to follow along on the hymns as we sing. And my daughter's super interested in all kinds of art, so then we point out, whatever artwork that we see. And again, putting coins in the box or lighting candles. It's a wonder. Those are all wonderful ways of showing kids that they're meant to be there too. I like that.
Yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I guess what I would say to the parents who are probably thinking, but they don't have my kid, they're talking about the easy kids. I guess I would just say that God gave you your kid, and he did that because he knows that you're the person most capable of showing that kid the love that he needs to lead him to Jesus, to his heart's true devotion. That's what my company is called, is Heart's True Devotion, because I really believe that each person has this innate desire for Jesus. And God gave you that kid because he knew you were the one who were capable of leading them, to Jesus. And so just recognize that person was meant to be with you. And yes, that child may be difficult, but remember, it's not about an immediate behavioral problem. It's about a lifestyle over time that you're going to develop with your kid. And as they grow, my oldest is almost 15 now, and I can tell you, as they grow, that stuff pays off. All of the work you put in from their life pays off. But if you focus on, okay, they're so hard during that 1 hour a week during Mass that I'm just not taking them to Mass, you're taking away kind of like that one special gift that Jesus has kind of given us, that sort of boost that can carry us throughout life. And so I would just say, whenever Mass is over, just say, next time will be better. I still love my kid. He still loves me. God, forgive me for the things I thought or the way I felt during Mass, and just move on.
Yeah. And also, I would say to parents to pray for the graces to get through the Mass with your children in a loving way. And, we're not doing it alone. We can pray for those graces and, ask and we'll receive. And that's one of the things that God certainly would want to give us, is the grace to be joyful in his Mass.
Absolutely. And that can take a lot of time sometimes.
Yes. Yeah. It's not immediate. Yeah, absolutely. And in our sufferings, that's, there's purification in there. So even if we're suffering through the Mass, but we're still going, and that there's great purification and sanctification that happens there.
Absolutely.
So tell us a little bit about your books and where to find you as we wrap up our time here.
Okay, so I have 5 books. I have a Mass journal that's like great for kids who are like in their first communion year that can write and read pretty well, and they'll do a little drawing and stuff. I have a interactive Mass book that is for like ages 3 to 7. There's no writing. It has some pieces you can cut out and move around. I have a prayer book for like preschool age, like 3 to 7, that has basically, it has prayers that I've written for little kids, so it's simple language, and then it is set to nursery rhymes, so Twinkle Twinkle and Hickory Dickory Dock, those kind of things. And then I have a book on Blessed Stanley Rother. I'm from Oklahoma. He is a blessed here in Oklahoma. He just had his beatification, I think, a year or 2 years ago, I think. Huh. Yeah, so I have a storybook about his life. He was an amazing priest and martyr, the first American-born martyr, I think. And then a coloring book to go along with that. And I also have an adoration journal that is for like 8 to 13-ish. It's like for tweens. And it goes through all the mysteries of the Rosary and some different like prayer prompts, different Bible verses and stuff like that. All of my books are available on Amazon. You could just type in my name, Jennifer Sharpe, or just type in like Catholic Mass book. That search usually works good. I am on Facebook, Jennifer Sharpe, Catholic author. You can look me up there. And then I have a website too where you can see all of the books, and I have videos of like all of the insides of the books. And if you get the prayer book, like how to sing the songs and stuff. And so the website is www.heartstruedevotion.com. So I'm sure you can put that like in your show notes.
Yep, I'm absolutely going to do that. I will put the links to everything that Jennifer mentioned and how to engage with her in the show notes for everybody who's listening, who's interested. Thank you so much, Jennifer. This is really, again, living the Catholic life and having the whole, point of our lives as parents is to get, our spouse and our children to heaven along with us. And you got to keep them in the faith to be able to do that. And the way that you do that is to get them excited and engaged in the Mass. So thank you so much for your wisdom on this. This is really, really great.
Yeah, thank you for Christine for having me on your podcast. I really enjoyed talking with you. It's one of my favorite topics, so always happy to share more about that.
Awesome. Well, we'll have to get you back on sometime. We'll talk about something else or talk more about this.
Absolutely.
There's certainly more to talk about. All right, everyone. Again, I will put everything in the show notes for you so that you can connect with Jennifer. And until next time. Don't forget to head over to thecatholicmama.com to get your free copy of How to Talk to Your Kids About God. This handy little ebook will teach you how to broach the topic of God with your children or how to respond to your kids when they want to talk about God, as well as give you answers to 7 of the trickiest questions about the faith that Christian parents face. You'll love the easy-to-understand grown-up answers, the pared-down but not talked-down answers you can share with your kids, plus recommended resources if you'd like to deepen your understanding of the topic. Get yours free at thecatholicmama.com.
Hello, God's beloved. I'm Annabelle Mosley, author, professor of theology, and host of Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. I invite you to listen in and find inspiration along this sacred journey we're traveling together to make our lives a masterpiece and, with God's grace, become saints. Join me, Annabelle Mosley, for Then Sings My Soul and Destination Sainthood on WCAT Radio. God bless you. Remember, you're never alone. God is always with you.
To a production of WCAT Radio. Please join us in our mission of evangelization. And don't forget, love lifts up where knowledge takes flight.